All right, Saagar, what's on your radar?
Well, we focus a lot on the 2020 presidential election on this show, but something that has lurked in the shadows and this week has burst into focus is the economic crisis that we find ourselves in as a result of the Chinese coronavirus. So yesterday, the Dow Jones officially entered a bear market with a sustained 20% drop. The first time that it has happened since 2009. This time around is fundamentally different. This downturn is not a result of financial engineering by a bunch of corrupt criminals. But that doesn't make it any worse or existential to the people who are affected by it. No single event has better exposed the utter rot within the American economy more than this one. Yesterday was noteworthy not only for the stock market drop, but for the first recorded firings related to the downturn. The Washington Post reports that hundreds have already began to lose their jobs in industries which disproportionately affect average working Americans. The laid-off workers include those at the Port of Los Angeles, travel agency workers in Atlanta and LA, stage lighting employees in Las Vegas, hotel workers, those involved in setting up the now canceled South by Southwest Festival in Austin, Texas. And additionally, yesterday, the NCAA announced that fans would not be allowed to attend games during this year's college basketball tournaments, including the Final Four games scheduled to take place at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. The NBA suspended the rest of their season indefinitely after a member of the Utah Jazz tested positive for coronavirus, and Tom Hanks and his wife also tested positive. These layoffs and these developments and closures and work stoppages have made all the worse with the full knowledge that things are not going to get better anytime soon. Travel restrictions and more are only more likely in the year ahead, and the impact on these industries will only get worse. Right now, all that the White House and Congress can seem to agree on is that we need a payroll tax cut in order to juice the economy and inject more spending. There's just one problem there, of course, that Michael Strain, who we've had on the show, pointed out yesterday. Everyday Americans who get laid off will not benefit from a payroll tax cut once they are no longer getting paid. And the money that will be spent in the economy won't exactly be spent on travel and other related industries that are laying off workers by the hundreds. In fact, Strain points out that a payroll tax cut disproportionately benefits wealthier Americans. And you know what else about those wealthy Americans? They can work from home while drawing a full paycheck. Livelihood and insurance and savings are not at risk. And now they're about to effectively get a raise. Self-quarantining for professional managerial class is really just cosplaying. They can sit at home and do their work on the laptop and order stuff on Amazon. And guess what? People still need to go out and deliver those packages full of hand sanitizer. They have to be in crowded warehouses and delivery trucks and interact with people and go house by house by house. The downturn has revealed to us that our economy is almost entirely geared towards the interests of this professional managerial elite and corporations. That the job of everyday Americans is to cater to their interests, is to protect their health and their leisure with uncertain work. And when the going gets really tough, like right now, don't you worry. Washington defaults to a solution which does not save those people. You can see the exact results from globalization happening today. Financial elites sold us a story about comparative advantage and cheaper pharmaceutical drugs and how great that is for everyday people. Well, it's great until we're in the situation where we are right now, where China manufactures 90% of our antibiotics, vitamin C, ibuprofen, 70% of acetaminophen, and many more drugs that Americans may, need in the middle of a global pandemic. We have become such a weak and a hollowed-out nation that Italy, which is in the midst of literally having to decide who lives and who dies, is getting assistance not from us, not from the European Union, which is it a part of, but you guessed it, from China, because only they have the surplus ability to even produce what the world needs. From bailouts to production, the coronavirus has revealed to us utterly for what we are, a nation of effete professional managerials who demand 24-hour service from their own citizens. And perhaps this time, we have a chance to change it all. Instead of meager measures like a payroll tax cut, we should immediately begin producing the things that we will need in this crisis for today and for the future. We need to build things in America again that provide support and stability to working families who also deserve their cash. And perhaps that is the silver lining to all of this. And really what I think I'm trying to do with this, Crystal, is show what the economy is. What is it, right? Where these people, you were just telling me about people who work in rental car agencies who are going to get been put on notice and say, hey, you're going to get fired. And this is, a payroll tax cut does not benefit people who are not getting paid. They're not, the money that's going to be spent in the industries of people who do receive the payroll tax cut are not going to be going toward those people in order to temporary work. People have bills to pay. They have a lot of debt. We're one of the worst consumer debt crises that we already have been in decades. And this is all built on the idea that we're spending. 70% of the U.S. economy is consumer spending. And with a limited downturn in that, just a limited one, when what we're seeing is a large disruption to that, you're going to see a major hit and possibly even a major recession.
Yeah.
So the point of what I'm trying to lay out here is we cannot default to where we are right now. Because the default is always cut the payroll tax cut, juice it a little bit. But as we know, real people's lives are affected by this. If you're a stage light worker or a 1099 contractor in this country, you don't have very much protection. Uber drivers. You don't have health care. You don't have some of these people have bills to pay. Some of my Uber drivers have been telling me that, you know what? Their fares are way down because they rely on daytime airport service.
Right.
People are not going to the airport anymore. People are afraid to get in cars. People are working from home. All of this has a major impact on people who don't have the security of white-collar workers. And now the white-collar workers and everybody else, they're the ones getting a payroll tax cut while we're only providing $50 billion in leverage from the Small Business Committee. And look, that's great. I mean, $50 billion, that's the tip of the iceberg. We need way more money.
Drop in the frickin' bucket. I mean, we are about to find out just how close to the edge the American working class has already been pushed.
That's a good point.
Credit card debt, student loan debt, auto loan debt. I mean, the consumers are already piled high with debt. And the way that you laid this out is so important because when you're in a crisis like this, headed towards a likely recession, I think we have to say at this point, it reveals the reality of our economy, which is a two-tier economy. There's the special flowers, the professional managerial class, of which we are very fortunate to be part of.
Absolutely.
And everybody else who caters to and serves the interests and needs and whims 24 hours a day of that professional managerial class, often without paid sick leave, often without health care, often without any sort of cushion in terms of a financial cushion that they could potentially fall back in a crisis situation like this. All of that is going to be revealed. And so you said this earlier, it's the perfect point. The president is this week meeting with bank executives, meeting with airline industry CEOs. Okay, fine, good, meet with them. Meet with some workers. At least meet with some union representatives.
And manufacturers and warehouses.
Find out what is really going on and what will really help people, because payroll tax cut isn't going to do a damn thing for a worker who does not have a job. It does nothing. Talk to some of those small business owners. Do the math about how far your $50 billion loan program is going to go, because you walk up and down the street, these shops, these stores are empty. And again, many of these places, many of these small businesses live so close to the edge. They can't afford to take a massive cut to their business over weeks and potentially months with right now no end in sight.
And I want to say a word too for students. I know a lot of students watch this show. I hear from so many of you. So many of them are just being kicked to the curb by the universities. These are people who had to buy last minute travel home. That's expensive, right? I'm sure. I mean, I guess the travel rates are low right now, but all disruption to daily life is not easy. These are people who on largely borrowed money, bought meal plans and housing. They rely on these things. I have friends in law school and these other places where they basically just tell you, get out. Not only take your stuff, get out and go home. Parents have planned not to have these children. I mean, the disruption to daily life is in the tens of billions already, right? And then who knows what is going to happen to that money? I mean, are the universities just going to keep it? A lot of this is student loan debt. I mean, how are these kids supposed to pay off their student loans? I mean, even right now, let's say one of these workers, if you're, a factory or a stage worker, right, and you have a degree, how are you supposed to make your student loan payments when you just lost your job? There are so many cascading numbers of questions here. And again, look, if there was ever a time, like I said, in 2008 on bailouts, I get it. I really do. These people, they screwed up the economy. Why do they deserve our money? But this time around, nobody did this. This is an event. Like, we need to make sure that this is the core purpose of a government, is to take care of its citizens in a time of crisis and to make sure that they're going to be okay. And the problem is that the pathway that whenever there's a crisis in D.C., they default to what do they know best. And what they know best is bailing out or helping and providing relief and benefit to their friends and to the professional managerial class, and workers get screwed.
Yeah,
average middle class citizens get screwed.
Socialism for industry
Yeah.
and for corporate executives. And, hard scrabble, personal responsibility, pull yourself up by the bootstraps for everything else. That's standard in Washington, and that seems like where we're headed with this as well. I mean, you also talk about, in terms of daily disruptions, think about schools. Like, on the one hand, you have to think about closing schools. Some school systems are already closed. I know Loudoun County here in the D.C. metro region has announced their schools are closing. My mom owns a preschool. She's been thinking about what she's going to do. But on the other hand, who again does that
What about moms?
hurt the
What
most?
are they supposed to do?
Moms and dads who, depend on this for childcare of the working class, where, they can't just if they're the ones delivering the packages, they don't get to just take off work.
Just take off work,
Childcare is extremely expensive. How does that all work? So again, of course, the burden falls disproportionately on the poor, the elderly, working class, and they are the people who are most invisible in this town.
Yeah, and then we need to make sure that they're the most taken care of, and that the businesses who employ them are the ones getting relief, and not necessarily, not a bunch of banks and Wall Street CEO with liquidity. All right, I'm looking forward to your radar next, Crystal.